Hello, my name is Adam Cuello, and I'm an account manager on the AdSense team here in Mountain View. Thank you for joining us for our 8th week in the AdSense 10th anniversary series. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit more about user experience, and we're going to be focusing on testing to see what works best on your site. And that's going to cover predominantly A/B testing best practices. So let's jump in. So before we get started, I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview on what you can expect this week. So like I mentioned, today we're going to be going through a presentation with some of the A/B testing best practices. Tomorrow I'm going to be hosting Katie and Jake, an AdSense publisher and a user experience researcher here at Google, to talk about their experience with A/B testing and some of the great results that they've seen. On Thursday, we invite you to take a look at the worksheet provided in the AdSense 10 challenge to make sure that you understood all of the concepts that we went over today. And then, of course, on Friday, we're going to be having office hours. So if you have any questions, we invite you to bring those to us from 11 to 11:30 Pacific time, so you can get your questions answered by a member of our AdSense team. So with that, let's jump into today's topics. We're going to start by talking about what exactly is A/B testing, and we're going to go through a couple of examples. So let's get into that. So A/B testing is a practice of creating multiple variations of a page with a goal in mind and testing different elements, different combinations of elements, different colors, different sizes, etc., to see which variation gets more users to do the desired action that you want. And so let's take a look at it, what's being tested in this example. As you'll notice, these pages are pretty much the same. The only difference in this and in the last example is the sport that we're showing, the image of the sport. So on the left, you can see that it's a couple of soccer players, and on the right, the image is swimmers. So those are what we call the variable. And the way that an A/B test works is that you use a tool like Google Analytics Content Experiments, which we'll go over later, and it essentially splits the traffic 50-50 between the variations and measures what users do on each of those pages. And we recommend only varying a few elements. We actually recommend only switching one element, like in this example where we switched the picture. Because if you switch too many things at once, you won't be able to see, you won't be able to definitively know that what you changed caused the result that you saw. So as you can see here, we only changed the image of the sport. So let's move on. So now that you know kind of a very high-level overview of like what A/B testing is, you know, how can it help you? You know, why should you care? And the main thing I always recommend to publishers is that they constantly try to improve their site, improve their user experience, because delivering a great experience to users is the best way to create loyal users, which will ultimately result in increasing your long-term revenue. And so let's dive into a couple of reasons, or a couple of very concrete benefits. Using A/B testing, first and foremost, will allow you to make data-driven decisions. Instead of just making decisions based on your gut feeling or you know, what looks good or what's popular, you know, what you see on other sites, A/B testing allows you to actually test different looks and feels of your site, different elements, to see what drives the action that you want most. Next, it helps you understand your users better. It helps, you know, as you may have learned from if you joined us for our Google Analytics Hangout on Air a few weeks ago, you'll know that you can get a pretty good understanding of what your users are doing from looking at analytics. But A/B testing allows you to see how varying elements on the page can drive or detract from the action that you want users to take. So if you imagine, you're an e-commerce site and you test having the buy now button on the left side versus the right side, those users will behave very differently. So you can first understand what impact that has on users, and then go with the one that drives and influences users to take the action that you desire. And finally, if all goes well, right, and you're able to move the needle on getting users to take the actions you want, that'll result in incremental revenue. And we've had some really great results in working with publishers on my team to do A/B testing, and we've seen up to 50% increase in AdSense revenue. So we highly recommend getting started with some A/B tests. You can start out simple, but there's some serious benefits to doing these type of tests on your site. So next, now that you understand, what are the benefits of A/B testing and kind of how the concept works at a high level, let's talk about some questions that you should be asking yourself before you actually get started. So first and foremost, the first question I always recommend you ask yourself, and you can look in analytics to understand this, is where are your users coming from, right? Are they coming from search? Are they coming from social networks? Are they coming from news sites, like other similar article sites? There are a number of places that your users could be coming from, and the Google Analytics sources report can really help you understand where your users are coming from. And that helps you think about, a little bit about the mindset of the user and the context that they're in. When you think about the context, you need to think about what's going on in their life that they need information from your site at this point in time, right? If they're coming from search, they're probably looking for something. They're looking for information. They may be trying to make a purchase, right? They may be looking for a product. If they're coming from social networks, maybe their best friend shared one of your articles with them, and they're going there to check it out. So the source and the context of the user informs why they're there and how you can, what kind of tests you can run to try to capture those users and turn them into returning and loyal users. So I kind of covered why are they visiting your site, right? What is the context? Why are they there? Next, you should be asking yourself, where do they enter the site? You know where they're coming from, but where are they entering your site? And you can look at the Google Analytics landing pages report to understand that. And the reason why this is so important is because when a user enters your site, that is the one and only chance you have to show them that you have what they're looking for and that your site can add value to their life. And it's important to understand, where most users are entering the site, because that'll tell you where you should be doing your testing, because that's where you can have the biggest impact. And contrary to popular belief, most of our publishers' users aren't entering on the home page a lot of times. A lot of them are going straight to an article page or a listing page or a job details page. It really depends on your type of business. So spend a little bit of time looking at the basic reports in Google Analytics to understand where your users are coming from, or where your users are entering your site. And finally, and what I'd say is the most important thing for running A/B tests is figuring out what it is you want the users to do when they enter your site. So on the landing page, say it's on the article page, what is it that you want users to do on your site? And another way to think about this, in Google Analytics terms, what is your goal for the user, right? So if you're an e-commerce site, your goal may be to get them to make a purchase, right? So you can create a goal in analytics that has the thank you page as the goal page. So when a user gets to the thank you page that says thank you for making a purchase with us, you'll consider that a conversion or a completion of the goal. So when you're doing A/B testing, it's incredibly important to look at the page that's most important, the top landing page, and define a clear goal for what you want users to do on that page. So let's look into that a little bit more in detail. Some of the actions that, I mentioned the make a purchase, right? But there are a number of actions, right? And it really depends on you and your site. You may want them to subscribe to you on a social network. You may want them to sign up for your mailing list, make a purchase, post a comment, and read an article, or read an article or a subsequent article, a related article. And each of these different goals will give you different ideas of what to test. So if it's making a purchase, as I mentioned before, the position of the buy button, the size of the buy button, the color of the buy button, any of those things can influence whether or not a user makes a purchase, right? And so it's important to really understand and have a clear and measurable goal for each test that you run. Otherwise, you're kind of just spinning your wheels. You're getting some data, but it wasn't really directed at a specific goal, so it's not super useful. So anytime you make a test, make sure that you say, okay, this is what we're measuring for. We want more users to make purchases, and we are going to change these variables, and the variation that has the most people creating purchases is ultimately the winner of the test. So let's move on. I think I got into that enough. So now you may be sold on the importance of A/B testing and understand how it can help you and what benefits it can bring to you. But you're probably wondering, how can I actually implement this test? It's great that it's going to help me, but how do I actually do it? And so what we're going to get into in a minute is we're going to go through Google Analytics content experiments, which is Google's A/B testing framework, and is built right into analytics and allows you to look at all of your analytics data, such as AdSense revenue, time on site, pages per visit, any analytics metrics for each of the variations that you run. So it's pretty handy and pretty straightforward to set up. But there are also a number of other tools out there, some plugins and add-ons to WordPress and Drupal and Joomla, the content management systems, and there are also a number of third-party solutions as well. So figure out which solution is best for you. But the important thing is to always be testing. Always be trying to improve your site. So let's take a look into content experiments, and I'll explain a little bit about how you would set up a test in there. All right, so this is Google Analytics content experiments, and on the left side you can see content, the content category, and in that drop down there is experiments, and you just go there and you click on that, and then the next step will be to actually create an experiment. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to give the experiment a name, and if you're going to be creating a lot of experiments, it makes sense to use a very descriptive name for your experiment. So let's say it was, you wanted to change the position of the buy button and you were measuring for purchases. So you can call it purchases button variations. And then basically you'll have already created 2 variations of the page and have those hosted on your server. So you'll have the one with the button on the left and one with the button on the right. and you'll just take the original one, put in the URL, give it a name that's descriptive, so you'll know what it is you're looking at when you're looking at reports, and it will pop up a preview on the right side, so you can confirm that it is the page you intended. And then for the variation, you'll do the same thing. You'll pop in the URL, give it a name, and it will show it on the right side as well. And you can have up to 5 variations for each test. But the thing to remember here is that it really depends on how much traffic you have to how many variations you should test at a given time. So if you have a ton of traffic, you can do a couple of variations at once, and you can get results relatively quickly. If you only have a little bit of traffic, you'll probably want to keep it simple and only have 2 variations per test so that you can get enough users through each of those variations to get a statistically significant results. So moving on. So the next step is to set the experiment options, right? So this is where you'll use that goal that you created in Google Analytics. So it could be making a purchase, or it could be signing up for a newsletter. It's the actual goal that you set up based on the action that you want users to take. And you can select that goal, or you can create a new goal right here in the experiment. So every user that runs through one of the randomly assigned variations or the original will be measured against how well they complete that goal. And you can also specify what percentage of users you want to include in the experiment. So let's say that you're a pretty big site and you don't want to have all of your users run through this experiment. You only want to test a small subset. So you can say 50% of users will be in it, or 20%, and then of that percentage that you specify of your total users, Google Analytics will randomly assign users to the different variations and measure against the goal that you set. And of course, you can also you can see those check boxes there. You can also subscribe to emails. So if you want to be notified, every so often of the results of these tests, you can do that. So moving on. So the next thing I wanted to go through is give you a sense of like some things to keep in mind when you're setting up one of these tests. As I mentioned before, you want to make sure that you're only testing one, ideally, or a few elements that on the variation, because that means that you'll be able to say definitively, okay, I changed this and revenue went up, purchases went up. Whatever it is that your desired action is, can be the change in that can be directly attributed to the variation on the page that you created. Next, as I mentioned, you want to use high volume pages. You want to use the one that most users are going to, because that will make sure that you have a statistically significant result, and that you can rely on those results to make future decisions. And you want to make we'd also recommend making bold changes, right? So you don't want to just change like something by a couple of pixels or just the color, although you could do that to get started, but you want to make some pretty bold changes. You could test a completely different landing page, if you're doing that, and you're testing for something very specific. Those bold changes will get you pretty detailed results, and that you can really act on. Because if something is only like 1% better, it's not really that reliable. You want to see some real big swings in performance. And then finally, you want to keep testing. Don't just rest on your laurels, but always be testing. The thing I like to use as an analogy is the Barack Obama campaign in 2012. Their motto was measure everything and test everything and then test it again, right? So they were never even satisfied with running one test. They wanted to do another test and see if the results matched the first one. So you don't have to go to that extreme, but the idea here is that you want to continuously test, to continuously improve your site, and to constantly be asking questions. And then, so let's go back one slide, please. So I went through the top part of the slide, but I want to show you here that the next step is just to implement one little extra snippet of code on your site, and here you can grab that, or you can send it to your webmaster so that they can implement it on the site, and that's what actually allows Google Analytics to split the traffic for you. So you'll want to check out our help center if you need help getting that implemented on your site, but it should be pretty self-explanatory here. So moving on, okay. And now we got a sample result, a sample report here. So once your test has been running and it has some data to show, you can go into the content experiments and view reports on each of the experiments you've run. And you can see how each of the variations has performed on the goal that you've set for it. You can also look at AdSense reporting tools within Analytics if you have Analytics and AdSense linked, and you can see how each variation has affected AdSense revenue, which we think is very handy, and we're going to be improving those features a lot in the coming months and years. So moving on. So just wanted to go through, some other ideas to try, some of which I've touched on, some of which I haven't. So when you're thinking about what changes to make to your site, the first thing is know what you're testing for. Know what it is that you want users to do, and then try changing the copy or the images or the elements to affect overall behavior. So maybe there's too much on the page. Maybe it's too cluttered, and users are clicking on other unrelated things that are taking them to other sites instead of your related articles. And your goal is to get more users to stay. Maybe take away some elements, but just look at everything on your page as changeable, and change the things that you think will move the needle on your desired action. Use Google Analytics to understand where your users are coming from and entering your site when you're trying to understand your users and when you're trying to figure out what to test. Use content experiments to choose your objectives and to have automatically split traffic between different variations and to measure against your already defined Google Analytics goals. And keep it simple. Don't go crazy. Just test a few different elements to see how changing one or two elements affects your desired action. And then again, I can't really reiterate enough. Continue testing. Don't just assume that you got it right the first time, because chances are you think it will go one way and you'll find out it actually goes the complete opposite way. Testing is the way to really understand your users and to fine-tune and optimize continuously. So definitely keep testing. So I just wanted that's pretty much it for the presentation today. Wanted to just reiterate that tomorrow we'll be having a Meet AdSense community with Jake and Katie. And they'll be sharing some of their experiences, and I'll be sharing some of my experiences with A/B testing. On Thursday, you'll want to use the worksheet that is provided in the AdSense 10 challenge to make sure that you understood everything that we went through today. And on Friday, we're going to have office hours, and a colleague of mine is going to be answering your questions about A/B testing, and so. Maybe do some homework and start running some tests, between now and then, and see if you get stuck in the process. If you have any questions, you can come to our office hours and get those questions answered. so that you can be more successful. And then finally, don't forget to tune in next week. We all know mobile is a hot topic, and this is the year of mobile. And next year is going to be the year of mobile too, believe it or not. So the time is now to go mobile and to make sure that you're providing a great experience for users on every screen. So some of my colleagues are going to be doing some awesome topics next week covering how to go mobile, and we highly recommend that you tune in. So moving on. So I guess that's it. Yeah. I just wanted to say thanks again for joining us. I hope you found this informative. Please, feel free to share feedback through the AdSense Plus page. And I just wanted to reiterate again: always keep testing. Try to continuously improve your website. And my experience has shown that if you focus on your users and provide a great experience to them, they will continue to come back, and your revenue will grow over time. So with that, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being an AdSense partner.